of AutoCAD models. I'm going to go ahead and we want to place points in AutoCAD, so I'm going to go ahead and hit place points in AutoCAD. And my splash screen is on my other monitor, so it'll come up here in just a second.
Are you guys running dual monitors, or are you guys doing single monitor?
Yeah, I have 2 monitors. I think James has a ultra wide monitor.
So just be prepared that some of these menus open in different spots. So
yes.
Kind of keep an eye out. If you don't see something, and you just need to keep looking around. And one of them that pops up that's really small is when you try to put points inside of a block. That little pop-up menu is like one little block of a menu item, so it's kind of tiny. Once you find it and dock it somewhere, it should pop up there again. But just as a warning, sometimes it just pops up wherever it feels like.
So I don't know if you guys saw as it was opening up, AutoCAD open. This wasn't there, and then once it finalized, it initialized, then our point manager ribbon popped up as well. Okay. So let's go ahead and which one is our primary here?
The primary is going to be the Alessandro.
This one, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. It made me re-add them, aren't they?
Does this have most of the content you want to use, or?
Yeah, this I already, if you look, there's already like some points in there that I was putting down, but yeah, this should have everything that we would use.
So one thing we need to keep in mind when we're doing when we're prepping the files for the data collector, if you're running a DWG that has a bunch of XREFs in it and you want any of that XREF stuff to show up on the data collector as a background, you're going to need to make sure that's all in the same drawing.
Okay.
So you might have to bind, like sometimes we call it a working background, and we'll go bind everything that we need to just so we can use that as a background for the guys in the field.
Right.
It's a little bit weird, but you get kind of used to it because you're just trying to get everything in one drawing. We try not to get too much line work as a background file on the drawing because it just slows down the data collector, because obviously it's not a supercomputer, right? So
yeah,
we want to kind of limit the amount of line work on there, and usually the grid and a background and the points, maybe some of the plumbing line work and things like that is usually best.
Real quick, I just wanted to point out, obviously the naming conventions are different, so should I just go ahead and remove these and just add these in as new?
they might not even need them any at this. I thought they were the ones, but I didn't really look to see if they were actually the ones. But if everything's popping up in the background, then it's probably, you probably don't even need them.
We'll just see if they're. We'll just add them in, and we can always unload them if we don't think we need them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think.
Oh, it's because I had already bound them to the drawing. So yeah, I had figured that out, that I needed to bind the background on it in order for it to show up after exporting it. So it's already bound on there, I believe.
Oof.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying before, when we want to clean up something and send it over, we're going to show you how to do that. But the export points in background will let you, like, you can have a file like this with a bunch of stuff everywhere. But when you create the background, you can just window off a section of it so it doesn't take everything else with it. That makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think I think I was using just one section. I tried exporting a few of them, and I would just window out one section of the whole model.
Good. So is that the area you're looking at?
Here.
Yeah, right in there. You can see some points in there already.
Oh, right here. Yep. Perfect. All right. So obviously our point manager, our tab up here at the top, the first thing we want to look at is our settings as well. Okay.
And once you change these settings, you shouldn't have to keep going back in here unless you see something wild going on. They should stay static.
Yep. Obviously, mine set to inches, and that should be pretty consistent for most AutoCAD models. Obviously, you're going to have some that are not going to meet the proper scales, right? They're coming over from something else, civil and so forth from there. So sometimes that stuff can get a little, finicky. I think that, when you look at layout and you look at some of the things as you move forward, whenever there's a discrepancy in scale or anything like that, I'd say 9 out of 10 times it's units, right? We're not in the right units somewhere, whether it was in the model, whether it's when we're bringing it into the tablet, just there's a discrepancy there. So just try to make it, obviously check and make sure you stay consistent. Okay. And then here's our symbol size. This is what we're talking about, making sure that, it is in relative to whatever units you're using, and you don't have anything where your numbers are massive. It looks like obviously things look pretty good there, consistent with what your annotation is on the model now. So we'll see how that goes moving forward.
So that settings there is where you could tone down the size of the block that's used for your point, right? Some people like a smaller block. Some people like, it's all up to you, and that's where you change the size of that.
Right. Just kind of depends on the surrounding stuff.
Okay, so everything, this whole background is block. Okay.
I just think it exploded once.
All right. Yep. All right, cool. All right, so you do have existing points in there. Ultimately, that is what this edit points is. If you're wanting to look at what you have in there, we can click on that. And wizard keep coming up on main screen. Go next. Whatever groups you do have will be listed here. You can go look at edit it, or you can just straight delete the group. I'm going to go ahead just for the sake of let's look at what we have in here, and then we can go back, we can delete or whatever it is, right? So let's look at editing this group, and more or less I just want to see kind of what all we have there. Again, you can do this per group if you need symbols to be bigger, smaller based off of the group. You can also make that adjustment per group. You will have these settings are specific to the groups themselves. So just a little bit of control as far as what the annotation looks like.
If we go back one,
yeah.
So you see the bottom left where it says code/description. That you can type whatever you want in there, and that's what's going to show up on the data collector when those guys are laying this stuff out. So if it was sleeves you wanted to put in there, or if it was hangers, or 4-inch waste and vent, whatever you guys wanted to put in there, that's what would go in there, and then that travels with that point to the data collector. So a lot of people use that for, giving a little bit more information to the guys in the field. That makes sense.
Yeah.
If you want to create a new group, or obviously you can move these points to that group. We don't need to do that here. And then this is kind of gives us the list here of what we have. Looks like you have 20 points. And okay. And so if you needed to, do anything here, it's really, you're kind of just checking it. You're really not able to modify anything. This is more just a visual check to see what you have on that group. Okay. And then obviously here you can do some shifting. If you want to do any offsetting, would be in the advanced tab. So if we can go next, then obviously there's not a whole lot more you can do. You just literally, we were just checking to see what we had in that group. Okay. So just kind of moving along here, we have our board. If you had points in the application itself, here, let's say we had points, we brought a CSV file into here, and we needed to get those into AutoCAD. Whenever we, points in CAD, it won't auto put them in here. We actually have to do from clipboard, because what it does is it kind of puts it out there temporarily. So that way, if you open up the model and you have to look at something or make any changes prior to those points coming in, they're not just, throwing them in there automatically when the drawing opens up. So it allows you to, okay, and then if they don't populate immediately, that's what this update drawing's for. It kind of refreshes the cache to make sure everything's visibly there. Okay. And then from here, obviously, I don't know how much we'll be able to do with these here, but ultimately this is kind of your general place points. You have within quadrants. So what that means is obviously you can insert points, but then you can insert the points based off, dictating where you want that annotation to be placed. If you follow the insert points, it'll follow the position within the group text where we were just looking, where we were editing the points. I don't know if you saw one of those screens that actually has annotation position. If we just use that first one, it's going to use the default that you have set for that group. Okay. And then you obviously can still move them manually if you needed to. Okay, so that's your manual placing points. Over blocks, this is exactly what it is. If you need to, if you have blocks and you want to do multiple at a time, you can actually select the blocks. If they're like blocks, you can obviously streamline that process by placing those points over a block. Then you have in blocks. It's like a nested block essentially. So you could, if you have an object that is, you're going to be using over multiple either projects and or drawings within that project, and it's a block you have saved that you use consistently. Let's say you have visual, you have a visual, bang it, any sort of inserts, anything like that. You have the ability to nest a point in those blocks, so that way anytime you place those blocks moving forward, you will have a point embedded in there already. So pretty cool feature. It gets a little bit more advanced that way, but it's definitely doable.
Right.
Over lines, this is exactly what it's intended, right? We can obviously, it's more for a grid. If you need to place grid points, column points, this is kind of a fast way to do that. You also have over polyface meshes. I think a lot of that, and William, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the polymesh faces is more as that's if information is brought from Revit or other applications, it's not necessarily solid all the time. It may be a polymesh face, so it allows the application to visibly see those polymeshes if they're not a block.
Yeah, so if they dumped out a bunch of architectural walls and stuff and they were 3D out of Revit, those are usually like polyface meshes when they show up in AutoCAD. So then you would be able to put points on the bottom of the wall or the top of the wall or wherever you guys wanted to put points on those polyface meshes. So it just depends on what you're working on.
And then you have place points over circles or points.
So
obviously that, okay.
it gets kind of confusing because, you know, if before you used the total station, points just meant like an AutoCAD point, which is just a little dot, right? But we also refer to points as points that we want to go lay out, and we're placing points everywhere. But if you guys are using the AutoCAD points thing to place, you know, hangers or sleeves or whatever you might want to, you know, identify as something that you want to place a layout point on, that's what you would use that for. That makes sense. It's kind of confusing.
Okay.
And then you can define a coordinate system. Very similar to Revit. Revit is very coordinate system driven, right? Obviously, you have shared project, but you can also define your own coordinate system. That's what this is for. Most of the time, you want to utilize your project coordinates, but sometimes things may be way out, really far away. You can define a coordinate system for your layout, which it will still be consistent to your project, but you could just define it so it just kind of brings things a little bit closer together. It gets, I don't know if you have a better explanation for that, William, but I mean, that's the way I kind of see that. It's, you could just determine it, define your coordinate system, you know, for your layout itself versus the project itself.
Yeah, basically, if you wanted grid line A1, that currently was in the drawing, if you did an ID on that and that location was like 5,000, 6,000 or something, and you wanted to change that, you're basically faking. Making this coordinate system is basically faking that those coordinates are a different coordinate than where they really are in the CAD model. It gets kind of sketchy, and I don't really recommend moving coordinates around. I like to keep my model, my coordinates the same. That way, whenever I go back and forth, everything matches. Haven't really had a good reason to ever really use that. So
No, not at all.
it's
But
more
it's
of a,
there.
it's more of a European thing.
And then we have kind of our deviations, right? You can essentially, as you know, say you bring your staked points in here, you can actually do a deviation so you can see, you know, where it was designed and where it was actually laid out, right? Where it was intended to be versus where it was actually laid out. And you can get some deviations, and it's obviously a nice reporting tool just so you can kind of see where you are, check and balances as you go through the project itself. And then obviously your exports, right? We have two options there. You can export just your points, or if you need the background file as well, which, you know, Nick kind of said in the beginning of this, if we can get to the point where you guys are exporting out points and a background file, then you're able to, you know, generate a file to bring into TDL. So most of the time we want our background files for our visual representation. So that's our most common option there. Export points would be more if you have the background file already and you need to append, you know, X amount of points into the current job, then you can export those points and then bring those points into your TDL job. Okay. Any questions so far?
No.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay.